Subscribe now and press the bell icon so you never miss an emotional story that touches your heart. The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Marcus stood at his post. He had served as a royal guard for 12 years, ever since he was 20 years old. His uniform was always perfectly pressed, his boots polished to a mirror shine, and his posture straight as an arrow. The other guards respected him, and the royal family trusted him completely. Marcus took pride in his work, believing that protecting the kingdom was the highest honor a man could achieve. But Marcus carried a secret that weighed heavily on his heart. 3 years ago, his younger brother Daniel had been accused of stealing from the royal treasury. The evidence seemed overwhelming, and Daniel was sentenced to 20 years in the kingdom's harshest prison. Marcus had pleaded with the judges, insisting his brother was innocent, but no one listened. The shame of having a criminal in the family nearly cost Marcus his position. But the king allowed him to stay because of his loyal service. Since that day, Marcus worked twice as hard to prove his family's worth. He volunteered for the most dangerous assignments, worked double shifts, and never complained. Yet inside, his heart was breaking. He visited Daniel in prison every month, and each time his brother looked thinner and more defeated. Daniel still claimed he was innocent, and Marcus believed him. But what could one guard do against the entire royal court? On this particular morning, Marcus was assigned to guard the eastern gate, a quiet post where little ever happened. He stood there thinking about his brother when he noticed something unusual. A man in a dark cloak was watching the palace from across the street. The man seemed nervous, constantly looking around as if checking whether anyone was observing him. Marcus's training kicked in immediately. He noted the man's height, build, and the way he moved. The cloaked figure suddenly walked toward the gate. Marcus stepped forward, his hand resting on his sword. The man stopped a few feet away and looked directly at Marcus with piercing blue eyes. There was something familiar about those eyes, but Marcus could not place it. The stranger spoke in a low voice, barely above a whisper. "Guard, I have information about the theft that happened 3 years ago. The real thief was never caught." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. He wanted to grab the man and demand answers, but years of discipline held him back. Instead, he kept his voice steady and professional. "If you have information about a crime, you must report it to the magistrate." The man shook his head slowly. "The magistrate cannot help. The thief holds a position of power in this palace. If I go to the authorities, I will disappear before I can speak the truth. But you, Marcus, you have the most to gain from the truth. Your brother rots in prison for a crime he did not commit." How did the stranger know about Daniel? How did he know Marcus's name? Before Marcus could ask, the man continued speaking. "Meet me tonight in the old forest beyond the village. Come alone at midnight. I will show you proof that will free your brother. But you must trust me and tell no one." Marcus's mind raced. This could be a trap. It could be someone trying to test his loyalty or get him removed from the guard. Yet something in the man's eyes seemed genuine, desperate even. The stranger turned to leave, then paused and looked back. "Your brother has less than a year left before the prison conditions destroy him completely. You have one chance to save him. Take it or live with regret forever." With those words, the cloaked figure disappeared into the morning crowd. Marcus stood frozen at his post, his mind spinning with possibilities. Should he go? Should he report this conversation? If he reported it and the man was telling the truth, the real thief might destroy the evidence. If he went alone and it was a trap, he could be killed or imprisoned himself. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Marcus performed his duties automatically while his thoughts remained on the mysterious stranger's words. He thought about Daniel's face during their last visit, how his brother's eyes had lost their light. He thought about his mother who had died of heartbreak 2 years after Daniel's imprisonment, never believing her son was guilty. He thought about justice and duty and the difference between the two. As evening approached, Marcus made his decision. He would go to the forest. Even if it was a trap, even if he risked everything, he had to know the truth. His brother's life hung in the balance, and Marcus could not live with himself if he let this chance slip away without investigating. That night, Marcus told his fellow guards he was going home early because he felt ill. He changed out of his uniform and dressed in dark clothing. As he walked through the quiet village streets toward the forest, every shadow seemed threatening, every sound suspicious. He had brought a small knife for protection, though he knew it would do little good if he was truly walking into an ambush. The forest loomed ahead, dark and forbidding under the pale moonlight. Marcus had played in these woods as a child, but tonight they felt foreign and dangerous. He walked deeper into the trees, following a path he remembered from his youth. The stranger had not told him exactly where to meet, only to come to the old forest at midnight. As Marcus pushed through the undergrowth, he heard a sound behind him. Before he could turn, strong hands grabbed him, and a cloth was pressed over his mouth. He struggled, but more hands seized his arms and legs. His vision began to blur as the chemical on the cloth took effect. The last thing Marcus saw before darkness claimed him was several figures in dark clothing surrounding him. When he woke, everything had changed forever. Marcus opened his eyes slowly, his head pounding with pain. The world came into focus gradually, and what he saw made his blood run cold. He was tied to a large oak tree in the middle of the forest, thick ropes binding his chest, arms, and legs. The rough bark pressed against his back, and when he tried to move, the ropes only tightened. Morning light filtered through the leaves above, which meant he had been unconscious for hours. Panic surged through him. He pulled against the ropes with all his strength, but whoever had tied him knew their craft well. The knots were professional, unbreakable. His knife was gone, his boots removed, and his pockets emptied. He was completely helpless, bound to this tree like a criminal awaiting execution. Marcus shouted for help, his voice echoing through the empty forest. No response came except the calling of birds and the rustling of leaves. He shouted again and again until his throat was raw, but no one appeared. The forest was far from the village, and few people traveled this deep into the woods. He could be here for days before anyone found him, if they ever did. As the morning wore on, Riku's mind raced through the events of the previous night. The mysterious stranger, the promise of proof, the ambush. It had all been a trap, but why? If someone wanted to kill him, they could have done so easily while he was unconscious. If they wanted to silence him, they could have taken him somewhere no one would ever find his body. Instead, they had tied him to a tree in a place where he might eventually be found. What was the purpose? The sun climbed higher, and Marcus felt thirst beginning to torment him. His tongue felt thick in his mouth, and sweat dripped down his face, despite the cool forest air. He thought about his fellow guards discovering his absence. They would search for him, but would they think to look in the old forest? He had told no one where he was going, following the stranger's instructions to come alone. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, his body exhausted from the struggle against the ropes. In his fevered state, he saw his brother's face, heard his mother's voice, remembered happier times before everything fell apart. He prayed to whatever gods might be listening, begging for a chance to make things right. It was afternoon when Marcus heard voices in the distance. Hope exploded in his chest, and he began shouting with what little strength remained. The voices grew louder, coming closer. Soon he could make out words, and his hope transformed into confusion. The voices belonged to palace officials, but they were not searching for him. They were discussing something else entirely. "Are you certain he will be here?" one voice asked. The informant was very specific. "The traitor comes to this spot every week to meet with his contacts from the neighboring kingdom. Today, we will catch him in the act." Marcus's heart sank. They thought he was the traitor. Someone had set him up perfectly, by luring him to the forest alone at night and tying him here. They had made him look guilty of exactly the kind of secret meetings that would mark him as a spy. When the officials found him, they would not see a victim. They would see confirmation of their suspicions. The officials came into view, led by Lord Pemberton, the head of palace security. Marcus knew Lord Pemberton well. The man was rigid, unforgiving, and absolutely convinced of his own judgment. When Pemberton's eyes landed on Marcus tied to the tree, his expression showed no surprise, only grim satisfaction that the reports were true. Marcus, the trusted guard, meeting his foreign contacts in secret. How long have you been betraying the kingdom? Marcus tried to explain, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He told them about the mysterious stranger, the promise of proof about his brother's innocence, the ambush. Even to his own ears, the story sounded like a poorly constructed lie. Lord Pemberton's face grew harder with each word. Enough. Your brother was a thief, and now we discover you are a traitor. The corruption runs in your blood. Guards cut him down and bind his hands. He will be taken to the palace dungeon to await trial. They cut the ropes holding him to the tree, but immediately bound his hands behind his back. Marcus's legs could barely support him after being tied for so many hours. 2 guards had to hold him upright as they began the march back to the palace. Through his despair, Marcus noticed something odd. Among the officials, he saw a man trying to hide his face, turning away whenever Marcus looked in his direction. But Marcus caught a glimpse of those piercing blue eyes. The stranger from yesterday morning was here. Among the palace officials, understanding crashed over Marcus like a wave. The stranger worked for the palace. This entire setup was designed not just to frame Marcus, but to destroy him completely. Someone in a position of power wanted him gone, wanted his reputation demolished so thoroughly that no one would ever believe anything he said. But why? What had Marcus done to deserve this? The march through the forest seemed endless. Marcus's mind worked frantically, trying to piece together the puzzle. Who would benefit from his destruction? Who had the power to orchestrate such an elaborate trap? And most importantly, how was this connected to his brother's false imprisonment 3 years ago? When they finally emerged from the forest, a crowd had gathered in the village. News traveled fast in the small community, and everyone had heard that a traitor had been caught. People Marcus had known his entire life looked at him with disgust and anger. Children threw stones while their parents shouted accusations. The man who had once been respected was now hated. All in the span of a single day. The palace dungeons were cold and dark. Far different from the bright halls Marcus had patrolled for 12 years. They threw him into a cell and locked the heavy door, the sound of the key turning echoing in the darkness. Marcus collapsed on the stone floor, his body finally giving in to exhaustion and despair. But as he lay there in the dark, something hardened inside him. He would not give up. He would not let whoever did this win so easily. There had to be a way to prove his innocence, to uncover the real conspiracy. His brother had spent 3 years maintaining his innocence from a prison cell. Marcus could do the same. He would find the truth, no matter how long it took. The cell door opened, and a guard entered, carrying a tray of food and water. Marcus looked up and recognized young Thomas, a guard he had trained himself 2 years ago. Thomas set down the tray and glanced toward the door to make sure no one was watching. "Sir, I do not believe you are a traitor. Many of us do not believe it, but we are forbidden from speaking in your defense. Lord Pemberton has made it clear that anyone who questions your guilt will be suspected of conspiracy." Marcus felt a spark of hope. He was not completely alone. Thomas continued in a whisper. "There is something else you should know. Your brother Daniel has been moved from his cell. No one knows where he was taken or why. The order came from high up, but there is no official record of the transfer." The hope turned to ice in Marcus's veins. They had taken his brother. Whatever was happening, it was bigger and more dangerous than he had imagined. 3 days passed in the dungeon. Marcus spent every waking moment trying to understand the conspiracy that had destroyed his life. He had plenty of time to think in the darkness, and slowly the pieces began to form a picture, though many gaps remained. Someone with significant power in the palace wanted both him and his brother silenced. The question was why. Thomas visited twice more, always being careful not to be seen. He brought news from above. The kingdom was in an uproar over Marcus's arrest. Some believed he was guilty, while others defended him. The royal family had not yet made an official statement, which was unusual. Normally, when a guard was accused of treason, the king himself would address the matter quickly to maintain public confidence. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. The cell door opened, but instead of Thomas, an old man entered. He wore simple robes and walked with a cane, his white hair falling to his shoulders. Marcus recognized him immediately. This was Master Edwin, the royal advisor who had served the kingdom for 40 years. Edwin was known for his wisdom and fairness, though he rarely left the palace library where he spent his days among ancient books and scrolls.
Leave us.
Edwin commanded the guard outside. When they were alone, he sat on the stone bench across from Marcus and studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Marcus, I have known you since you were a boy playing in the palace gardens while your father served in the royal guard. I do not believe you are a traitor. But belief is not proof, and without proof, you will be executed within the week." Marcus leaned forward, desperate for any help. "Master Edwin, I swear on my mother's grave that I am innocent. Someone has framed me the same way they framed my brother 3 years ago. I believe the two events are connected." Edwin nodded slowly. "I believe you are correct. I have been researching the old records of your brother's case, and I have found disturbing inconsistencies. The evidence against Daniel was too perfect, too convenient. It appeared suddenly, all at once, as if someone had carefully arranged it. At the time, I voiced my concerns, but I was overruled by Lord Pemberton and several other officials who wanted the case closed quickly." "Lord Pemberton," Marcus said bitterly. "He was at the forest when they found me. He seemed almost happy to see me tied to that tree." Edwin's expression darkened. "Pemberton is a complicated man. He is loyal to the kingdom, but he is also ambitious and easily influenced by those he considers his betters. I do not believe he is the mastermind behind your troubles, but he may be an unwitting tool of whoever is." The old advisor reached into his robes and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. He handed it to Marcus, who opened it carefully. The parchment contained a list of names and dates written in neat handwriting. Marcus recognized several names as palace officials, but the dates meant nothing to him. "What is this?" "These are the people who benefited financially after your brother was imprisoned. When a person is convicted of theft from the royal treasury, their family properties are often seized by the crown. However, in your brother's case, the properties were not held by the crown. They were quietly sold to various buyers, all of whom are listed here. The sales happened remarkably fast, as if they had been arranged before the trial even ended." Marcus studied the list more carefully. Most of the names meant nothing to him, but one stood out. Lord Blackwood had purchased the largest piece of property, a valuable piece of land near the river that Daniel had inherited from their father. Blackwood was one of the wealthiest and most powerful nobles in the kingdom, close to the king himself. "Lord Blackwood," Marcus whispered. "But why would he need to frame Daniel? He could have simply bought the land fairly. Your father refused to sell that land to Blackwood years ago. It was a matter of principle. Your father believed the land should stay in the family. After your father died, Daniel maintained the same position. Blackwood is not a man who accepts refusal easily. But this goes deeper than just land." Edwin stood and walked to the small barred window, looking out at the narrow slice of sky visible from the dungeon. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with concern. "I have discovered that several other families have been destroyed in similar ways over the past 5 years. Each time, someone is accused of a crime with seemingly perfect evidence. Each time, the convicted person's properties are quickly sold to the same small group of buyers. Each time, anyone who questions the conviction faces threats or accidents. The pattern is clear once you know to look for it." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. They are stealing from innocent families using the law as their weapon. How many lives have they destroyed? At least 7 families that I have found, probably more, but I cannot prove it. The records have been altered. Witnesses have disappeared or changed their stories. And anyone who gets too close to the truth finds themselves in danger. I am old and considered harmless, so they have left me alone, but you are young and determined. That makes you dangerous to them. Then why tie me to a tree instead of just killing me?" Edwin turned back to face him. "Because killing you outright would raise too many questions. You are well known and respected among the guards. Your sudden death would be investigated thoroughly. But if you are convicted of treason and executed legally, no one will question it. They will say, you got what you deserved. Your reputation will be destroyed, and your claims of conspiracy will be dismissed as the lies of a desperate criminal." The full horror of the situation settled over Marcus. This was not just about him or his brother. This was about a systematic corruption that reached into the highest levels of the kingdom, and he was completely helpless to stop it. "What can I do?" Marcus asked. "I am locked in this cell. My trial is in 3 days. Without evidence, I will be convicted and executed." Edwin reached into his robes again and pulled out a small iron key. He placed it on the bench beside Marcus. "This key will open your cell tonight at midnight. The guard will be Thomas, who is loyal to you. He will take you through the old tunnels beneath the palace, tunnels that few people remember exist. They will lead you out of the city." Stared at the key. "You are asking me to escape? That will only make me look more guilty. You're already considered guilty. Staying here means certain death. Escaping gives you a chance to find the real evidence we need. Your brother is being held in a secret location by Blackwood's men. I have learned that he is still alive, but he will not be for long. Blackwood is planning to stage Daniel's death as a suicide, the final proof that your entire family is corrupt and broken. In the old monastery beyond the western mountains. It was abandoned 20 years ago, but Blackwood has been using it as a private prison for those he wishes to keep hidden. If you can reach your brother and free him, together you might be able to find the evidence we need. There may be other prisoners there who can testify to Blackwood's crimes." Marcus picked up the key, feeling its weight in his hand. He was being asked to become a fugitive, to run and hide when everything in him wanted to stand and fight openly. But Edwin was right. Fighting within the system would only get him killed. He needed to work outside it, at least for now. "What about you?" Marcus asked. "When they discover I have escaped, they will know someone helped me. You will be in danger." Edwin smiled sadly. "I am 80 years old. I have lived a long and full life. If I can help expose this corruption before I die, it will be worth whatever consequences come. Besides, I am not without my own resources and protections. I have information about powerful people that they would prefer to keep secret. They will not move against me lightly." The old man walked to the cell door, then paused and looked back. "Marcus, when you free your brother, do not try to return to the capital immediately. Go to the northern province and find Lady Catherine. She was once betrothed to Blackwood, but she broke the engagement years ago. She knows things about him that could be valuable. She has her own reasons to want him exposed. I do not understand. Why would she help us? Because Blackwood destroyed her family too, though he did it differently. Her father died in what was called an accident after refusing to support Blackwood's political ambitions. Catherine has spent years gathering information, waiting for the right moment to act. You may be the ally she needs." With those words, Edwin left the cell, locking it behind him. Marcus sat in the darkness, the key hidden in his palm, and prepared himself for what was to come. Midnight came slowly. Marcus lay on the cold stone floor of his cell, the key clutched tightly in his hand, listening to every sound in the dungeon. Other prisoners moaned in their sleep. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, and rats scurried along the walls. When he finally heard the church bells toll 12 times in the distance, his heart began to pound. Footsteps approached his cell. Marcus stood and moved to the door, pressing his ear against the wood. He recognized Thomas's distinctive walk, and relief washed through him. The young guard stopped outside the cell and spoke in a barely audible whisper. "Sir, we have 10 minutes before the next patrol. The tunnel's entrance is in the storage room at the end of this corridor. Master Edwin has left supplies for you there, including food, water, money, and a map. Once you enter the tunnels, turn left and follow the marks on the wall. They will lead you out of the city." Marcus unlocked the cell door as quietly as possible. It swung open with a soft creak that seemed deafening in the silence. Thomas stood there in his guard uniform, his young face tight with fear and determination. He handed Marcus a dark cloak. "Put this on and keep your head down. If anyone sees us, I will say I am taking you for questioning. It is thin, but it might buy us a few seconds." They moved quickly through the dungeon corridors, Thomas leading the way with his lantern. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every sound a potential discovery. They passed other cells where prisoners slept, and Marcus felt guilty for leaving them behind. But he could not help them by staying. His only chance to fight this corruption was to escape. The storage room was exactly where Thomas said it would be. In the corner, behind stacks of old barrels, was a small wooden door that Marcus had never noticed in all his years at the palace. Thomas pulled it open, revealing a dark stone stairway leading down into blackness. "The supplies are at the bottom of the stairs," Thomas whispered. "Sir, I must ask. What if you do not come back? What if we never see you again?" Marcus gripped the young guard's shoulder. "Then remember what Master Edwin told you? Remember that there is corruption in the palace, and someone needs to stop it. If I fail, others must try. Do not let them win." Thomas nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "Go now. I will lock this door behind you and put the barrels back in place. May the gods protect you." Marcus descended the stairs into complete darkness, feeling his way along the damp stone walls. At the bottom, his hands found a small bag and a lantern with flint to light it. Once the lantern glowed, he saw he was in a narrow tunnel carved from the living rock beneath the palace. The ceiling was low, forcing him to stoop, and the air smelled of earth and age. The bag contained everything Edwin had promised: dried meat, bread, a water skin, a pouch of coins, a small knife, and a map drawn on oiled cloth. Marcus studied the map carefully. The tunnel system was extensive, running beneath the entire city. Edwin had marked the route clearly with red ink. "Follow the left path, take the third right turn. Continue straight through the old cellar, and emerge in a drainage culvert outside the city walls." Marcus began walking, the lantern casting strange shadows on the tunnel walls. The marks Edwin mentioned were there, small symbols carved into the stone that only someone looking carefully would notice. The tunnel twisted and turned, sometimes climbing, sometimes descending. In places, water pooled on the floor, and Marcus had to wade through it carefully. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Marcus might have been walking for 1 hour or 3. His back ached from stooping, and his legs trembled with exhaustion. But he pushed forward, driven by thoughts of his brother suffering in Blackwood's secret prison. Daniel had endured 3 years of false imprisonment. Marcus could endure a few hours of discomfort. Finally, he reached the old cellar Edwin had marked on the map. It was a large chamber filled with broken furniture and rotting crates, clearly abandoned for many years. On the far side, stone steps led upward to what must be the drainage culvert. Marcus climbed carefully, pushing aside a heavy iron grate at the top. Cool night air rushed in.
Oh.
Cool night. Breathed deeply, tasting freedom. He emerged in a rocky area outside the city walls, hidden among bushes and tall grass. The city rose behind him, its lights twinkling in the darkness like fallen stars. Ahead lay open country, and beyond that, the western mountains where his brother waited. Marcus closed the grate and covered it with brush. Then he studied the stars to determine direction and began walking west. He traveled through the night, avoiding roads and staying to the forests and fields. By dawn, he was many miles from the city, his legs aching and his stomach demanding food. He found a small stream and drank deeply, then ate some of the bread and meat Edwin had provided. As he rested, Marcus studied the map more carefully. The old monastery was a week's journey on foot, longer if he had to avoid towns and patrols. Edwin had marked several small villages along the way where sympathetic people might offer help.
Oh.
But Marcus would have to be careful. News of his escape would spread quickly, and Blackwood's men would be searching for him for 3 days. Marcus traveled through the wilderness, sleeping in caves and hollows, eating sparingly to make his supplies last. On the 4th day, he reached the first village Edwin had marked. It was a small farming community nestled in a valley. Marcus waited until evening, then approached cautiously. Looking for the house Edwin had indicated on the map, it belonged to an elderly woman named Margaret who lived alone on the edge of the village. Marcus knocked softly on her door, ready to run if necessary. The door opened a crack, and a weathered face peered out. "Are you the one Master Edwin sent word about?" she asked quietly. "Yes, I am Marcus, and I need help." She pulled him inside quickly and bolted the door. Her home was simple but clean, with a warm fire crackling in the hearth. She gestured for him to sit and brought him a bowl of hot stew. Eat first, then we will talk. You look half dead." The food was the most delicious thing Marcus had ever tasted. As he ate, Margaret watched him with sharp, intelligent eyes. When he finished, she spoke. "Master Edwin's message arrived 2 days ago. He said a good man would come, wrongly accused, seeking to save his brother and expose corruption. He said I should help you if I could. Edwin once saved my son's life when others would have let him die, so I owe him a debt." "I do not want to put you in danger," Marcus said. "If they find out you helped me, there will be consequences." Margaret snorted. "I am 70 years old. What are they going to do to me? Besides, Lord Blackwood has enemies in every village in this kingdom. We know what he is. We have seen families destroyed, lands stolen, lives ruined. If you can stop him, many people will help you, though they must do so quietly." She stood and went to a cabinet, pulling out a bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside were clean clothes, more supplies, and a small bag of coins. "These belonged to my son before he died. They should fit you well enough." There is also a letter of introduction to a man named Robert in the next village. He has information about the old monastery. He worked there as a gardener before Blackwood took it over. He knows the layout and where prisoners are kept. Marcus felt overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you. I will never forget this kindness. Just stop Blackwood. That will be thanks enough. Now sleep. You can stay here tonight, but you must leave before dawn. Blackwood's men patrol these areas regularly, and they are looking for you." That night, Marcus slept in a real bed for the first time in over a week. His dreams were troubled, filled with images of his brother suffering, of Lord Pemberton's satisfied face, of the mysterious stranger with the piercing blue eyes. But when Margaret woke him before dawn with bread and cheese for his journey, Marcus felt renewed strength and determination. He traveled for 2 more days before reaching the next village. Robert's house was exactly where Margaret said it would be. The man was in his 50s, with strong hands and a cautious manner. When Marcus showed him Margaret's letter, Robert's suspicion transformed into grim determination. "I wondered when someone would finally stand against Blackwood. That monastery has become a place of suffering and darkness. I worked there for 15 years before Blackwood forced me out. I know every room, every passage, every secret that old building holds." Robert spread out a detailed drawing on his table. It showed the monastery layout with remarkable precision. He pointed to a section in the eastern wing. Marcus studied the drawing carefully as Robert tapped the eastern wing of the monastery. The old man's voice remained low and serious as he explained the layout. This was where Blackwood kept hidden prisoners, usually between 5 and 10 at any time. The guards changed shifts at midnight and dawn, never more than 4 on night duty. And they grew lazy because no one had ever attempted a rescue. The monastery itself was massive, built centuries ago when the old religion flourished. High stone walls surrounded it, with towers at each corner and only 2 entrances. The main gate would be heavily guarded, but Robert pointed to a smaller southern door leading to the old wine cellar. Though usually locked, no guards watched it because they believed no one knew of its existence. "The lock is old," Robert explained, his weathered finger tracing routes through underground passages on the drawing. "It can be picked with patience. From the cellar, you can reach the eastern wing through passages without being seen." Now Marcus absorbed every detail, aware that one mistake meant death. "How will I find my brother?" he asked. "Blackwood keeps his most valuable prisoners in the corner cell farthest from the entrance. The thickest walls, the strongest door. If your brother matters to Blackwood's plans, he will be there." Robert handed Marcus the drawing, lockpicks wrapped in leather, and explained he had made them during his days as a locksmith. The old monastery locks were outdated, fashioned before modern improvements. These picks would work. "Why help me?" Marcus asked. "You risk severe punishment." Robert's face hardened. "Blackwood destroyed my sister's family 8 years ago. Her husband was accused of fraud on false evidence and hanged. She died of grief 6 months later, leaving their children scattered among distant relatives. I have wanted revenge, but I am just one old man. Perhaps through you, justice can finally be served." Marcus gripped Robert's hand firmly. "If I succeed, your sister will be avenged. I swear it." That evening, Marcus began his journey toward the western mountains. After another full day's travel and 2 more finding the path Robert described, he reached the monastery. On the 3rd night, Marcus crouched in the forest overlooking the building. It sat isolated in a valley surrounded by steep hills, dark against the starry sky. He watched for hours, counting guards and noting their patterns. Robert had been right. They were comfortable, believing no one would attempt a rescue at midnight when guards changed shifts. Marcus moved silently down the hillside in dark clothing, using skills learned as a royal guard. The cloudy night hid his approach. He found the small cellar door exactly where Robert said it would be, hidden behind overgrown vines. The lock was old and rusty, but solid. Using Robert's picks, Marcus worked carefully. The first pick broke, frightening him momentarily, but the second succeeded. After 10 agonizing minutes, the lock clicked open, inside the pitch-black cellar, smelling of mold and decay. Marcus lit a small shielded candle and navigated the underground passages. Robert's drawing proved perfect every turn, and stairway matched exactly. Marcus moved deeper, passing storage rooms with rotting supplies, abandoned chapels with broken altars, and empty sleeping quarters. The monastery felt like a tomb, finally reaching the eastern wing. Marcus heard faint voices, rattling chains, and someone coughing. Prisoners suffered here in darkness while the world forgot them. His chest burned with anger at Blackwood's cruelty. How many innocent people had been imprisoned in this place? The corridor leading to cells was dimly torchlit. Marcus extinguished his candle and moved cautiously forward. A guard sat at a small table near the entrance, his head nodding as sleep claimed him. Marcus waited, patient as stone, until the guard's head dropped fully and soft snores filled the air. Then he moved like a ghost. Thick wooden cell doors reinforced with iron bands lined both sides of the corridor. Marcus approached the farthest cell in the corner. His hands trembled as he examined the more complex lock. He worked carefully, sweat dripping despite the cold air. The lock clicked open. Marcus pulled the heavy door slowly, wincing at each creak. Inside the tiny cell, barely large enough to lie down in, a thin, broken figure huddled in the corner. Marcus's heart clenched. "Daniel," he whispered. The figure stirred and looked up. Even in dim corridor light, Marcus saw how much his brother had changed. Daniel had once been strong and healthy, but now resembled a skeleton covered in skin. His face was hollow, eyes sunken, hair long and matted. Yet those eyes focusing on Marcus held a spark of life. "Marcus." Daniel's voice was a dry rasp. "Am I dreaming? Are you real?" Marcus knelt beside his brother. "I am real. I have come to get you out." "Can you walk?" "I think so. They have not fed me much." "Marcus, how did you find me?" "They said you were arrested for treason, that you confessed and blamed me, that our entire family was destroyed." "All lies. I will explain later. Right now, we must move quickly and quietly. Can you stand?" Daniel struggled to his feet with Marcus's help. His legs shook, but he managed. Marcus gave him water from his flask, and Daniel drank gratefully. As they moved toward the cell door, a voice from the next cell whispered urgently, "Please, if you are rescuing him, do not leave the rest of us. We are all innocent, all victims of Blackwood's schemes." Marcus froze. He had not planned for this. Rescuing Daniel was already dangerous enough, but how could he abandon innocent people? He looked at Daniel, who nodded weakly. "We cannot abandon them," Daniel whispered. "It would make us no better than our enemies." Marcus made his decision. He moved quickly down the corridor, opening cell after cell with Robert's picks. 6 prisoners emerged, all in various states of weakness and despair. Among them was a middle-aged woman who looked familiar. "You are Marcus, the royal guard," she said. "I am Isabella, daughter of Count Brennan. Blackwood had my father killed and blamed me for stealing from his estate. I have been here for years." The pattern became clear. Count Brennan had died 5 years ago in what was called an accident. His daughter had disappeared shortly after, and Blackwood had purchased his lands. The scheme continued systematically. "We will get you all out," Marcus promised, "but we must move silently. If guards wake, we are all dead." The guards still slept as they crept past. Marcus led the group back through underground passages, moving as quickly as weakened prisoners could manage. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow a potential threat. When they reached the cellar door, Marcus felt hope surged. They were almost free, but the door suddenly swung open. A guard stood there, his eyes widening in shock at the escaped prisoners. Before he could shout, Marcus lunged forward and struck him hard, knocking him unconscious. But the damage was done. Other guards outside had seen everything. Shouts erupted into the night. Bells rang, alerting the entire monastery. Marcus pushed prisoners through the door. "Run for the forest. Stay together and do not stop." The prisoners stumbled into darkness, supporting each other. Marcus and Daniel brought up the rear. Behind them, guards poured from the monastery, carrying torches and weapons. Arrows whistled through the air, one grazing Marcus's shoulder. They crashed into the forest, branches tearing at clothes and faces. The weak prisoners moved slowly, and guards gained steadily. Marcus knew they could not outrun their pursuers. He needed to buy time. "Daniel, take them north to Millbrook. Tell them Marcus sent you. They will help. Show them this." Marcus pressed Robert's letter into his brother's hand. "What about you?" Daniel asked fearfully. "I will lead the guards away. When they follow me, you will escape. Go now, brother. Live and tell our story." Marcus turned and ran in a different direction, shouting to draw attention. Several guards broke away to chase him. He ran for hours through the dark forest, his lungs burning, legs screaming, the arrow wounds soaking his shirt in blood. He kept moving, leading guards farther from his brother and the prisoners. Finally exhausted beyond endurance, Mark stumbled and fell in a small clearing. Guards surrounded him, weapons drawn. Their leader stepped forward, and Marcus's blood ran cold. It was the mysterious stranger with piercing blue eyes who had lured him into the original trap weeks ago. Victor, the man with piercing blue eyes, smiled coldly as he looked down at the captured Marcus. In torchlight, his features were sharp and cruel, marking him as someone accustomed to power and violence. "You have caused considerable trouble, Marcus. Lord Blackwood is very displeased. You were supposed to die quietly as a traitor. Instead, you escape and free valuable prisoners, making us look like fools. That cannot be forgiven." Marcus struggled to his feet despite his body screaming in protest. Blood dripped from his shoulder wound and exhaustion made him sway, but he would face death standing. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded. "I am called Victor. I serve Blackwood because he pays extremely well and asks few questions about methods. Your brother's conviction 3 years ago was my work. I planted evidence, bribed witnesses, and made sure everything pointed to guilt. Your father refused to sell land to Blackwood, so your family had to be destroyed. It is really that simple. Business, nothing personal." Rage gave Marcus his new strength, and he lunged at Victor, but guards forced him to his knees. Victor stepped closer, his smile widening. "Your brother escaped with other prisoners. They will tell everyone what Blackwood has done," Marcus said through gritted teeth. Victor's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, unfortunate, but it changes nothing. Your brother and the others are weak and scattered. Who will believe them? They are convicted criminals with no proof. Meanwhile, Blackwood has wealth, power, and the king's ear. The truth is whatever he says it is." A guard spoke nervously. "Victor, what do we do with him?" "Kill him here and bury the body deep. Let him disappear without a trace." The guards drew their swords, but before they could fall, arrows suddenly whistled from the darkness. 2 guards cried out in pain. More arrows flew as guards spun in confusion. Victor shouted orders, but his men panicked. Figures emerged from the trees, moving with military precision. There were at least a dozen armed fighters who quickly overwhelmed the guards. A woman stepped into the torchlight. Marcus recognized her from descriptions Master Edwin had given him. This was Lady Catherine, once betrothed to Lord Blackwood. She was in her mid-30s, tall and elegant, in practical traveling clothes. With intelligent gray eyes and dark hair braided back, She examined Marcus with curiosity and concern. Must be Marcus. Master Edwin sent word you might need assistance. He was correct. Can you stand? Marcus managed to get to his feet with help. His shoulder throbbed, but he was alive. How did you find me? We have been watching the monastery for weeks, gathering evidence against Blackwood. When we saw prisoners escaping and guards chasing someone into the forest, we followed. Your brother and the others are safe. My people intercepted them and are taking them to a secure location. Victor, disarmed and held by Catherine's soldiers, glared at her with pure hatred. Catherine, you stupid woman. Blackwood will destroy you for this. Catherine looked at him with contempt. Blackwood has been trying to destroy me for 10 years. Ever since I refused to marry him and discovered what kind of monster he is. He killed my father and stole my family's fortune, but he could never break my spirit. Today, his destruction begins. She turned to her men. Bind all prisoners securely. We are taking them as evidence. Catherine examined Marcus's shoulder wound. This needs proper treatment. We have a camp a few miles north with medical supplies. Can you ride? I will manage, Marcus replied. They traveled through the night to a hidden camp in a deep valley. It was well organized, clearly established for some time. Catherine had at least 30 people, men and women moving with purpose and discipline. This was not random rebels, but an organized resistance. Physician treated Marcus's wound, while Catherine explained herself. She had spent years building this organization, recruiting people victimized by Blackwood or who believed in justice. They gathered evidence, protected victims, and waited for the right moment to strike. Your escape changed everything, Catherine said. Master Edwin contacted me and said you might be the catalyst we needed. A former royal guard, respected and known, fighting to save your innocent brother? Your story could rally people in ways cold evidence never could. Over the next days, as Marcus recovered, he learned the full scope of Catherine's operation. She had documented dozens of Blackwood's crimes, collected testimony from victims, and obtained financial records showing the pattern of stolen properties. What she lacked was a way to present this evidence, where it could not be suppressed. Daniel and the other freed prisoners arrived, and the reunion was emotional. The brothers held each other and wept, releasing years of pain and fear. Each prisoner shared their story, adding pieces to the picture of Blackwood's systematic corruption. We have evidence and witnesses, Catherine said during a meeting, but we need something more. We need to force the king himself to acknowledge what has happened. Blackwood is too powerful for normal channels. Marcus had an idea. The king holds a public audience monthly, where citizens can bring grievances directly to him. It is an old tradition, rarely used anymore, but still law. If we presented our case there in front of the entire court, Blackwood could not suppress it without the king's explicit support. And I do not believe the king is corrupt. He simply does not know what has been happening. Catherine considered this. It is risky. Blackwood will have people there. They might arrest us before we can speak, but it might be our best chance. The next audience is in 2 weeks. They spent those weeks preparing. Catherine organized evidence into clear presentations. Freed prisoners practiced testimony. Marcus worked with Master Edwin to craft a statement that would be impossible to ignore. On audience day, they traveled to the capital in careful operation. Catherine's people created diversions. Marcus, Daniel, and 3 other prisoners approached the palace in simple clothing. The throne room was packed with nobles and citizens. King Edward sat looking bored as minor complaints were presented. Lord Blackwood stood near the throne, whispering occasionally in the king's ear. When Marcus's turn came, he stepped forward and removed his hood. Gasps filled the room. Lord Pemberton shouted for guards to arrest the escaped traitor, but King Edward raised his hand. Wait, I would hear what this man has to say. Marcus served my guard faithfully for many years. Before I condemn him, I will know why he stands accused. Marcus spoke clearly and powerfully, telling his story from the beginning. Daniel and other prisoners stepped forward, adding testimony. Master Edwin presented documentary evidence Catherine had gathered. The throne room erupted in chaos. Blackwood tried dismissing everything as lies, but his voice was drowned out by overwhelming evidence. Other nobles admitted suspecting corruption but being afraid to speak. More victims came forward with their own stories. King Edward's face grew darker as he understood the scope of corruption. He looked at Blackwood with horror. Is this true? Have you been destroying innocent families and stealing property under cover of my justice system? Victor, seeing which way events unfolded, confessed everything, Kay implicating Blackwood completely in exchange for mercy. The king stood from his throne, his voice ringing with royal authority. Lord Blackwood, you are stripped of all titles and properties. You will be imprisoned and tried for your crimes. Marcus and Daniel, your names are cleared. All falsely imprisoned will be freed and compensated. Guards seized Blackwood as he tried to flee. The proud lord who had seemed untouchable moments before was dragged away in chains. 6 months later, Racus stood on a hillside overlooking his father's land. The property had been returned to his family, along with compensation. Daniel stood beside him, healthy again after months of good food and rest. They had planted flowers on their mother's grave. What will you do now? Daniel asked. The king offered to reinstate you in the royal guard. Marcus shook his head. Catherine has asked me to help build an organization dedicated to protecting people from corruption and ensuring justice for everyone. It's not just the powerful. That feels like better work. Daniel smiled. Then I will join you. We have both seen what happens when good people do nothing. We should spend our lives making sure it does not happen again. They walked down the hill together as the sun set. Two brothers who had emerged from darkness into light, ready to help others do the same.